Namo Buddhaya, Namaste, and Merry Christmas. Today is Christmas Eve, the day before Christmas Day, when people celebrate the birth of Jesus. And we too, in Buddhism, have a similar day in May, the full moon of May, we call Wesak, which is the day we celebrate the birth of our teacher, the Buddha. So there are many similarities in these two celebrations. They are both a celebration of the birth of our teachers, of our respective faiths. The word Saddha, Pali word Saddha, is the word we use in Buddhism for faith, and I like the translation I've heard of faith as confidence. And you too can use the word confidence in place of faith, if you like, because if we have confidence in our teacher's teachings, then we are more able to practice our teacher's teachings. If you have simply faith, which implies connotations of a religious nature, a belief, the reliance of an external force or higher power to bring about results, we can call that blind faith rather than confidence, because it isn't necessarily going to come to fruition or be proved. But both in terms of the teachings of the Buddha and the teachings of Jesus, they are very simple. They are two teachers who lived very simple lives. Now at Christmas, people are often celebrating with lavish days of overindulgence and enjoyment, and there's nothing wrong with this. It's also the winter solstice, the shortest day in the Northern Hemisphere, and before Christianity was a day that was used to celebrate the progress so far through the cold, dark nights and winter, and the looking forward to the spring ahead, the days getting short, the nights getting shorter and the days getting longer. So this is less of a dominant thing as you get closer to the equator and reverses the other side. But as you can see, religious festivals, wherever they are just that. They are religious festivals. What you make of them, what you understand of them, must be what you need to take from them, but with confidence in that what you gain from them will work for you. And religions of all kinds can be understood and interpreted as the truth, because most religions, all religions, are with a common aim of developing harmlessness and peace and kindness. So with that in mind, whether you are in a country where they celebrate Christmas, or you're not in a country where they celebrate Christmas, like myself, Christmas doesn't happen here really in India, not where I am, and I don't really celebrate Christmas. Christmas in Buddhism is officially on Wesak. It is the birth of the Buddha, also the death and the day of enlightenment that we celebrate on that day. And it is a festival when many, many Buddhists and people get together, and there is a good degree of celebration. But in Buddhism, if we are practicing well, it should be that that feeling of Christmas that we may remember as a child, of waking up in the morning, oh, it's Christmas Day, is with us every day. that realization, that true happiness, which only comes from contentment. Now, it's true to say, on Christmas Day itself, it can be very pleasurable, with lots of lovely food and drink and gifts and family and celebration. To some, however, in that environment, it may not be so. They may just put up with it for that day. They may be the ones doing all the work to provide all of these things and be looking forward to the day after when they can just relax. Or it may be you're missing out on all of this through your unfortunate circumstances, or you may be feeling alone or just unable to get out and join your friends. Whatever your circumstances, wherever you are, there is always true happiness by looking within. And in meditation, in Buddhism, we look within ourselves, where we can find peace, serenity, calmness of mind, and contentment. And from contentment arises true happiness. Not from all of the turkeys and the Christmas puddings and all of the parties. This is very temporary in nature. And even on the day itself can be overwhelming and dissatisfactory. Can cause you some suffering in that short time. And the day after, you may feel, oh, I'm glad that's over for another year. And all of the lead up to it, all of the stress involved before Christmas. So those of you celebrating Christmas, take a moment out alone, sit and look inwards towards that peace, serenity, calmness of mind, and contentment, where you will find true happiness. Because happiness is a symptom of contentment. It's not as a result of getting the gift you wanted for Christmas. Because even if you get the gift you really wanted for Christmas, the minute you receive it, it becomes another source of suffering. It's no longer what you were hoping for. You've got it. That hope will be replaced in a very quick time for wanting something else, or worrying about what you've received, keeping it in pristine condition. Whatever, once we receive these things, the moment has gone. But with contentment that one can find inside through meditation, you have a long-lasting source of happiness. Happiness is the symptom of contentment, like sadness is the symptom of being discontent. But if you're feeling sad because you feel you're discontent as a result of being unable to celebrate Christmas for whatever reason, similarly, like all those people who are celebrating Christmas, you can look inwards and you will find the same peace, serenity, calmness of mind and contentment. And you can generate, as a result of that contentment, the very same happiness. Happiness of a long-lasting nature, not of the nature of finishing a plate of Christmas pudding, or the nature of unwrapping a present, or seeing a long-lost family member. A permanent happiness that will last throughout the year, throughout your life. And we are all entitled to this. We are all born with this ability to find loving kindness within ourselves, compassion for others, joy for others when they are succeeding, and equanimity, a calmness, a serenity, an ability not to react, but to be proactive in each and everything we do. So whether we are partying tomorrow on Christmas Day, or sitting alone in our apartments, our flats, bedsits, or houses, whether we're in a country where they celebrate Christmas or a country where they don't, if you have some time, if you're not working, you can still spend the time in meditation. If you are surrounded by Christmas parties and family and goings on, you can also find a little time. So in that, we are all very much the same, both Buddhists and Christians, and all faiths that have a little time to spend either with themselves or with their families. Now, the similarities in the life of the Buddha, whom was born in, I won't go into the full stories, but born in similarly miraculous circumstances about 500 years before Jesus, and then the birth of Jesus, the Nativity, which is of course what you are celebrating in countries that celebrate Christian countries or Christians that celebrate Christmas. There are very many similarities, and then thereafter their lives have very many parallels. The Buddha, before the Buddha was born, his parents sought advice from wise men, 3 wise men. At the Nativity, we hear of the Magi, the 3 wise men that came to give gifts to Jesus of gold, frankincense and myrrh. Frankincense is I must say, when I was a child and we were singing We Three Kings of Orient are, travelling afar, or whatever, however it went, gifts of frankincense and myrrh. I didn't know what these things were. Gold, yes. But here, in this country, frankincense is abound on every street corner. It's this rock stuff, and it's made of these wood resins, and you burn it. And also in the Orthodox Christian church, it's the same. They put it in balls and it smokes, and it smells absolutely divine, satisfying our sensual desire of smell, which is so powerful. But it was of course a very significant, precious gift that was given at this time, the birth of Jesus, along with gold and myrrh, the anointing material or ointment that they use either just prior or after your death. So it was, I suppose then, something that would have been given in the circumstances of any auspicious birth to a royal person of this nature, something like that. And these teachers, these babies, Jesus and Buddha, grew up and went on to be these spectacularly famous teachers who have changed the world, without any doubt. So whatever your doubts in your faith if you're a Christian, or your faith, your saddha, your confidence if you're a Buddhist, there can be no doubt that these teachings are still around. 2000, in the Buddha's case, 566 years later, in Jesus' case, 2023, 24 years later. Such a long time. Valuable teachings that have lasted and still work well today. Now, there are very many similarities in the 2 ways of life, the 2 religions. The time that the Buddha taught was considerably longer. He taught for 45 years, And this was because he was able to live until he was in his 80s. But of course, Jesus' life was cut very short, and he only taught for 3 years, from the age of 30 until 33. And now I'm going to tell you my little Christmas fairy tale. And I say fairy tale, story, because there's no basis behind this little myth of mine. Albeit you can find many documentaries and research and studies on YouTube and Google about the connections between Jesus and Buddhism, Buddhism and Jesus. But I just like it as a nice story and an illustrative point of the good that Christmas does in conjunction with the good that the practice of Buddhism does. And that is that after Jesus, after his bar mitzvah at the age of 13, he kind of disappears. There is no story. There's nothing in the Bible until he is 30 years old, when he returns and he teaches for 3 years. Now, there are many stories about this length of time, what happened between his 13th birthday and his 30th, when he returned. And I like to think of those 3 wise men, the Magi. Not Magi instant noodles, the Magi, the 3 wise men, or 3 kings, or from the Orient, which could be China, most probably, or even the northern reaches of India, the southern foothills of the Himalayas, because the Silk Road, running from east to west, west to east, was the motorway of that time for all traded things, and was the route people travelled. Now, I like to think that those 3 Magi heard of the birth of Jesus coming up, so travelled along the Silk Road to be there, following the star. And there were similar circumstances behind the Buddha's birth. But they gave him 3 gifts of gold, frankincense and myrrh. Things that were very representative of the East, where they had come from. Maybe they also gave the young protege an insight as to where he could gain some knowledge. And after his bar mitzvah, he could well have travelled in the direction from whence they'd come, along that Silk Road to the east, and stopped in northeast India, the land of the Buddha. And there is evidence, there are stories, fables, myths of his existence for many years in that place, this place, at that time, where he learned Ayurvedic medicine, meditation, all of the things that are represented then further on in his life through the New Testament, the Bible, the miracles, the healing, and the feats he achieved through the rest of his life, which could so easily have been taught as practices that would have been going on in Buddhist monasteries that were already established in that region if he'd spent some time there. So it always makes me think the nativity, the 3 kings, the 3 wise men, the Magi, is that beautiful connection between Christianity and Buddhism. Now, it may seem to some people these things are worlds apart, but really they're not. Both Jesus and Buddhism, and the Buddha, put everything else aside, both taught morality, be kind. Love thy neighbour was what Jesus said. Loving kindness to all beings is what the Buddha said. Meditation is what the Buddha taught. Jesus taught prayer. And the Buddha taught wisdom, developing your mind. And Jesus taught that the practice of good behavior through those 10 commandments can only lead to benefit in this life and the life thereafter. The understanding of his teachings, which could well have come from what he'd learnt if he'd come to the East, and therefore was able to convey the teachings that the Buddha spent 45 years teaching in such a shorter period of time of just 3 years. But nevertheless, this is just a story, and I think it's a nice story, and I like also to think that after the resurrection of Jesus, he may well have returned to India. Certainly St. Paul saw him going in that direction. That's written in the Bible. There is a section of the Bible that isn't in the Bible, which does give more detail towards that idea. But the main point being, whether you are having a Christmas with family, with gifts, with food, or whether you are having a Christmas alone, we are all born with the same ingredients. These, as the Buddha described it, fathom-length bodies. These are just bags of skin containing bones and liquids and nasty things that we move around this earthly planet with, and we have thinking brains which coordinate all of this, and somewhere in there is, in Christianity, a soul, in Buddhism, our citta, that which knows our physical feelings and our mental emotions, that which knows what's coming in from what we're seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and how our thoughts are arising and passing away. And it's that which knows that we protect by our moral virtue, by our practice of meditation or prayer, and by our practice of the development of wisdom. Wisdom, not as in acquired knowledge of facts and figures, but wisdom in the true knowledge of the nature of existence, and that we reap what we sow, in the words of Jesus. If we do good, we will receive good. If we do bad, we will receive bad. And we call this in Buddhism karma, which just means action. Through good actions, we will benefit. Through bad actions, we will not. Many similarities, many parallels. But whatever your faith, whatever your sadha, have confidence. Make this day a day to be marked, yes, but also to reflect. Reflect on your confidence. If there is a day to make determinations, resolutions, promises to yourself, don't wait until New Year's Eve. Make a resolution, a determination, a promise to yourself to practice a little meditation each and every day. Nothing intense. You can just sit for a few moments and look inside, where you will find peace, serenity, calmness of mind, and contentment. We can all do that, whatever our faith. I'm being joined by a fellow being in my forest here. So I'm thinking metta, loving kindness. Because whatever it may be, it is staying over there for the time being and allowing me to just finish this little talk with you. So on that point, I think I should draw it to a conclusion. I was just going to quickly mention something Christmassy as well, that Dear Father Christmas, that is, I think, mainly a Western idea and a very wonderful and beautiful tradition, is, of course, he comes from Saint Nicholas, and Saint Nicholas is representative of the first of the 10 parami, perfections in Buddhism, of dana, giving. And Christmas is about giving, not just gifts, even just your time helping other people. And people are extra generous at Christmas, even walking to the shops to get something you've forgotten, some cranberry sauce. People will open doors for you, let you out if you're driving in a junction. Everyone's a little bit more generous on Christmas Day. And of course, Father Christmas, throughout the West, is a great representation of the example of giving, dana. And we can all give. Even if we don't have anything to give, we can give of ourselves. So if you know anyone who is alone, go and say hello, speak to them. They may not want anyone to speak to them, in which case, be mindful and notice whether they want you there or not. But it doesn't have to take long. A smile, that's all. It's all that's necessary to make someone's day. And by this, we're fulfilling our teacher's instructions towards giving ourselves that all-important contentment and happiness. And in Buddhism, helping us towards the attainment of nibbana. And of course, in Christianity, whatever your understanding of the afterlife may be. So with that, I wish you all a very Merry Christmas, and may your day be fruitful. More importantly, as meditators, may your meditation be enjoyable, bring you contentment, happiness, and help you on the path to Nibbana. Namo Buddhaya, and Merry Christmas.